Welcome. I'm so glad that you're able to join me here today. If you are coming into Bright Talk for the first time, here's what you need to know. There's some really good stuff right underneath the video. Down there, you're going to see a tab called Attachments, and we'd like to load that up with some goodies, including a PDF of the slides that I'll be walking through today. So grab that. While you're there, notice that you can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can go get some information about People First Leadership Academy, including the entire course catalog. And there's an infographic that accompanies the presentation that I'm making today. It'll serve for you as a job aid with some great reminders. Now, we are going to cover a really important topic, leadership at every level. It's an important topic because it is becoming something that ought to be at the forefront of what you're talking about. It ought to be at the forefront of your strategies. So get ready, buckle up. We're going to cover a lot of ground today. And I'll start by putting some slides up for you so you can follow along. You know, one of the big problems that a whole lot of organizations are grappling with these days is that employees are leaving in droves. Call it what you will, the great resignation, the quiet quit for the ones who don't formally leave. But there's something going on, and that something is creating a whole lot of problems for folks. But if we were to peel back the onion, it's not just all employees who are leaving. It is primarily the employees who don't feel a sense of belonging, employees who don't feel like their work is meaningful, and certainly employees who don't feel like they're getting opportunities to grow and to develop. See, all that causes employee engagement to suffer. And if you don't have employee engagement, well, those cracks, they only become chasms. They cause great divides between an employee and the organization that they work for. And if you don't have high levels of employee engagement, it also means that your retention rates will suffer. Your productivity rates will not be where you'd like to see them. Customer satisfaction, revenue, profit margins, they're all affected by employee engagement. And yet, you're probably grappling with how on earth to make this right. How do you get the ship back on course? How do you find the budget, allocate the budget, track the results, reinforce learning in practical ways to even make the business case for developing employees and doing the work that it takes to engage them more? And that's been really, really difficult. But I'm going to show you an evidence-based approach that's easy and it's affordable and it's effective. I'm very pleased to meet you. I'm Deb Calvert. And if you're attending live, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor and put something in the chat for me about what you see with the slides, because they're not displaying for me. And that makes me wonder if they're displaying for you. I'll keep talking. And if we don't have slides, just know that they're in the attachments and you can get the slide deck at any time. But I said I'm Deb Calvert, and my company is called People First Productivity Solutions. Here on Bright Talk, this is the People First Potential channel. And for about 6 or 7 years now, every month, we've been creating content for you. It's content about being effective in the workplace. It's primarily designed for folks in HR, in management, and those at any level who want to work on personal effectiveness and leadership development. So there's a wide range of topics. I'll probably refer you to a couple of the other presentations here by the time we get done, because, well, when you do something like this for 6 or 7 years, eventually there's going to be some overlap. Well, here's the very first most important thing you should know, and that is that leadership is not about a title. If you've got people in your organizations who are called, for example, the senior executive team, but really you call them the leadership team, that's a problem, because that suggests to people that only executives are leaders. And it confuses the difference between what it means to manage and what it means to lead. And Jolene, thank you very much for letting me know that you could see the slides. I'll put them back up there then, and I won't worry that I can't see them. If you can, that's all that matters. So leadership is has nothing at all to do with titles or position or placement on the org chart. what's really going on is whether you know it or not, whether you like it or not, whether you've ever thought about it or not, at times everyone leads. And in fact, you can even look at 2-year-olds playing together in a sandbox, and you'll see that one at some point is leading the other. So if we could just take some of that onus, that senior level stuff away from leadership, we'd have a better opportunity to liberate leaders at every level, which would bring out some of the potential of people, would certainly help to resolve some of these issues with engagement and ennoblement. So people are back to feeling good about the work that they do and knowing that their contributions are appreciated. We have a much better chance if we can first do that. But I'm going to dive into it deeper. You see, what we have to do first is clarify then the difference between managing and leading. And I'm a bit of a word nerd. I like to go back to word origins. Sometimes they really do a good job of helping to see the distinctions versus our current vernacular and how we use words. To manage means to handle. The original root word meant to handle. It originally meant handling horses, but that's neither here nor there, to handle. And currently, you could think of the word mano, like in Spanish. Mano means hand, same root word. And this is what managers do. It's very important work. Managers handle the work that needs to get done today in the short term. And typically they handle that through other people, but it's all about getting that short term, getting that work done, keeping things operating as smoothly as possible in the here and now. But to lead means something different. Leiden is the root word of lead from Middle English, and it basically meant to guide. So there's a few things that are implied by that. If you're seeking someone to guide you, you need a guide, that suggests that, well, first, they're going to take you to a place you want to go. Otherwise, why would you bother following? So it's a place you want to go, but it's not necessarily an easy one to get to on your own. You need someone perhaps with a little additional knowledge or skill or something to help you clear that path and make your way to this place that you want to be. So when you think about leaders, think about yourself as a leader. Imagine that you're the person in the jungle. You've got the machete. You're chopping down the vines. You're clearing the path to take others, the followers, to this fabulous new place that they want to get to. Here's another way you could look at leadership. I really favor this definition of leadership from Jim Kouzes and Barry Posner. You've probably heard their names before. They are pioneers in the field of leadership development. They're responsible for the evidence-based approach to leadership that we'll talk about later, known as the 5 practices of exemplary leadership. They are also the Leadership Challenge is their body of work now in its 7th edition, the book. And there are workshops and assessment tools and just a whole lot that goes along with this. Over 6 million people have participated. So here's what they say leadership is. They say leadership is the art of mobilizing others to want to struggle for shared aspirations. It's elegant, this definition, because there's so much packed into it in just a few short words. Let me break it down. The art, well, management's a science. You can go get your MBA. You can read any book on management, and it will give you formulas and processes and very specific ways to go about managing, handling the work that needs to get done today through other people. But leadership, that's an art. Certainly, there are behaviors, research gives them to us, behaviors that make people more effective in leading. But it's about how you express those behaviors and when and who and how you choose to use those behaviors. Art is self expression. And since leadership is fundamentally a relationship, you're going to express those behaviors differently with different people. To be authentic, it has to be about the artist, the leader, you. It's got to be about something that's real. And it can't be authentic if it's overly formulaic. So let's keep in mind that leadership is an art and it's about mobilizing others. There's our verb, our action word, mobilize. It means to get groups moving together in a unified fashion in the same direction. So mobilizing others. Now I know the next part probably trips you up just a little bit. So let me explain. It's not just struggle for the sake of struggle. Nobody wants that. But it's about people caring so much, being so committed that they want to struggle. They're not just willing to struggle, they want to struggle. Think back to the civil rights movement. In fact, this phrase was first used in the Dr. King I Have a Dream speech, to want to struggle. So if you think about that civil rights movement in the 60s, certainly people wanted to struggle. They wanted change so much that they wanted to struggle. They went to marches and they risked their lives. They went to jail and they wanted to struggle because, not just for the struggle, but because they had these shared aspirations. They had a place that they wanted to get to, a place they'd never been before and didn't quite know how to get to on their own, but they were really committed to getting there. And shared aspirations, well, I think the important word there is shared. See, I've got lots of aspirations, but I can't impose those on you or foist those on you. Even if I were to be your manager with authority, I cannot force you to continue so much that you want to struggle. You'll just do it as so long as I'm looking over your shoulder, and you'll do the bare minimums if it's about my aspirations alone. But if it's about yours and mine, and you see yourself within it and it matters to you, well, that's a game changer. So leaders have to be able to know that, to understand that, and to do something with it. Now, leadership at every level, I think, is defined a little bit more specifically by David Marquette. He's an author. He's done quite a bit of work as a speaker around leadership. Before that, he was a U.S. Navy submarine commander, and he tells great stories and anecdotes about his leadership in that submarine. He says that embedding the capacity for greatness in the people and practices of an organization, and then decoupling the leadership greatness in people and practices, you decouple that from the person at the top. That's leadership at every level. And the basic premise of this theory is that traditional leadership, if you're thinking about the senior executives being leadership, for example, that kind of construct or that way of thinking, well, it creates unthinking followership. People just do what they're told. They don't think about it. They don't contribute to it. They punch the clock. They do those bare minimums and they go home and start again the next day. But if you have less top-down leadership and more leadership at every level, what you end up with are more engaged contributors who are leading, who are working more autonomously, who are more empowered, more engaged, have a stronger sense of commitment, and great things happen when you're able to do it that way. You could think of leadership at every level as a culture of empowerment. This is the end result. A culture of empowerment, well, that is going to include people at every single level in every single job. It's going to include them in the ability to make a difference, to make an impact from wherever they are. I'm talking about maintenance workers, bookkeepers, people behind the scenes, people who are customer facing, people who do repetitive work on the assembly line. It doesn't matter. Everybody in a culture of empowerment can make a difference. They can lead in the moment. They can contribute to the dialogue. You've got distributed leadership as opposed to all of that being in the management seat. What that means in a practical sense, distributed leadership, it means things like, well, we have meetings, and usually the manager from our department goes to those meetings to find out what's going on with other managers in the same division. How about different people attend that meeting each week and bring back to the team some of the items that have been discussed? Or even if the manager's attending every week, there's a rotation of who goes with the manager to help disseminate that information back to the group, or to do something with contributing to that. So, how about making sure that the individuals, the folks at the front line, are equipped to face challenges as they come, that they don't have to constantly get permission. They don't have to constantly second guess what they're doing. This kind of starts with a manager opting out of being the decision maker and the approver of all things. And managers do that because well, somebody comes in their office and says, "Hey, here's the problem." Instead of the manager giving the solution, instead the manager then says something like, "Well, what do you think we should do? Or how do you want to work on that? What do you need me for?" And putting it back, giving it back to the other individual. Because you have to uncondition people. If they've been conditioned to think that the manager has to make all those decisions and do all of that bottleneck stuff, well, they're not going to believe it until they really get reconditioned to see that they themselves are able to. Now, what I'm suggesting, it doesn't happen overnight. You have to give people the skills. You have to first give them experiences that cause them to see themselves as leaders and to feel good about that. And when they do, here's what's going to happen. Here's what it looks like when you have leadership at every level. You end up with managers, directors, senior executives in the organization, HR, I'm talking everybody. You end up with a focus throughout the entire organization on giving control rather than on taking control. You know, there are a lot of situations in any workplace where you see turf wars and power grabs, and managers, they want to manage more people, they want to take on more projects, they want to step into next level assignments. It's all about the resume and building the resume by having more and more control. But that's really not all that sustainable. It's much better when a manager sees it as their role to build other leaders, to give control, to delegate effectively, to build people up so that even in the job they hold today, their capacity expands. If you don't have KPIs for your managers to ensure that that happens, chances are it won't happen, right? The human ego forces us to want to take the control and to have the glory. And then the KPIs that are functionally related causes people to do managing more of the work, faster work, higher quality work, the handling. So you might need some KPIs. And those KPIs have to do with how much did you delegate? How much did people learn? What additional capacities do people on your team have? And manager level jobs should have people focused metrics of some sort. When you have leadership at every level, you'll start to see people in all different types of functions and roles. You'll start to see them thinking bigger picture and longer term because they'll be getting some business acumen and they'll be able to think outside themselves. And because they're engaged, they have this emotional commitment to the work. They'll also want to do more than the bare minimums that they have to do to get done with their shift and go home and call it a day. You'll get people asking questions because they're thinking longer term. Those questions will be, what if we tweaked the process like this? What would happen if we talked to that department? Should we consider? And these are all really, really healthy kinds of questions. You wish right now that people were getting their voices into the mix because it would help you avoid a lot of mistakes that are made. To get there, and when you get there, you'll know it because you'll see that you've got a whole lot of inclusivity when it comes to decision making. Before changes are made, people are asked, they contribute, they weigh in, they feel committed because they were heard, even if their ideas aren't the ones that ultimately were what became the determining final decision. But they'll participate in those decisions. They'll have license to ask questions about those decisions, and they'll be a part of the ongoing process of making decisions that affect them. You'll also have clarity, and clarity is super important. Setting expectations and providing as much clarity as possible, as you know, it's really important. When people have clarity, what am I supposed to do? How much am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to do it? Why am I needing to do this? How does this affect other departments? What does this mean for us in the future? When they have all that clarity, well, then they have confidence, confidence to try something new, confidence to speak up, confidence to step outside their comfort zone just a little bit to mentor someone else or to make a suggestion to someone in a tangential department. With confidence comes courage. People become emboldened. They'll say things that they might not otherwise have said, and they'll do things they might not otherwise have done. You'll find that innovation and process improvements begin to flow naturally from all of this clarity. Now, let's go back to that definition. Shared aspirations. They matter a lot. That's what you're mobilizing people around. That's what will cause them to want to struggle. So that shared aspiration, that shared vision, that's going to unify people. We're in this together. I'm not struggling alone. I'm not struggling for no reason. There's purpose. There's meaning. And if you couple that with values, in our organization, we have certain values. They're not just words on the website. They guide how we act around here, how we interact with each other, how we do our work. And when you've got the vision and you've got the values, and those are helping bond people together, that too, right? That's a symptom of leadership at every level. It's cause and effect. You'll get there faster if you have this, and it will be sustaining leadership at every level if you really bring that into the forefront. To get this, you've got to have ongoing leadership development. That doesn't have to be super expensive. Doesn't have to be elaborate. You don't have to start from scratch either to build systems that are already out there with evidence-based models like the one I'll be telling you about. But the words for all are the words that matter here. Somebody started last month and they're brand new and they're fresh out of school. You might be thinking that, well, that isn't appropriate to give them leadership development. But this phrase, for all, I mean it really seriously. And I'll say more about that on the next slide. But when you add everything else that you see on this slide, when you add it all up, what you're telling people is that people development is a priority here. We're serious about it. We mean it. It's not optional. It's not something that we do only when times are good, only when we can afford it, only when we're not too busy. People development is a priority. It is both a means and an end result. To get to that vision that we have, we need people development. To retain people and engage them and have higher levels of productivity, we believe in people development. To be able to achieve our goals, our strategic vision, we develop people. When you develop people, when you build people, they build the business for you. Now, there's a problem if you're still wondering about that for all and what I said about even your brand new hires fresh out of school. There's a problem when you wait too long. Oops. I think I may have been one slide ahead of myself. All right, I'll take them in order. I'm going to put you in the suspense, edge of your seat place for just a moment because I'll talk about this first. We'll come back to those folks. All right. These are the reasons why you might not be developing leaders at every level already. And what I'm showing you here, this comes from Forbes magazine. It was November 2020, but I don't see any more recent research that disproves this. So I think it's probably still pretty close to this. These are misperceptions. What you see on screen, there are no facts there. They're misperceptions, and they result from defining leadership too narrowly. Remember, it's not about managing. A better, broader definition includes self-leadership, peer leadership, project leadership, and leadership of customers, colleagues, constituents, up, down, and all across the organization. I have personal experience as a coach, 20 plus years that I've been doing business coaching, and it reveals another reason. If we develop leaders but don't have immediate openings for them, a lot of my customers have said, well, we're afraid then that they'll go somewhere else. And I say, if you don't develop them, they're still going to go somewhere else because they want that leadership development. They're going to go seek it out. Or even worse, they might stay and give you less than they otherwise could because you have suppressed their potential. So here's the deal. Leadership happens with or without development. People lead. 2-year-olds in the sandbox, they lead. And if you haven't developed people, if you haven't helped them learn to be effective leaders, the outcomes simply won't be as good. You will teach people in some cases not to lead, to hold back and to wait for someone else to lead. If you have ad hoc, ill-informed, unaligned leadership, you've got unhappy employees who are disengaged and confused. And you've got a whole lot of management stuff going on without the leadership, without the shared aspirations, without the mobilization, without any art and authenticity behind it. And that's why you don't have people who want to struggle. People who instead are very easily burned out, low morale, doing the bare minimum. Okay, here it is. The problem with waiting too long. The problem with waiting too long to develop people is that leadership is big. There's too much to absorb and practice and master all at once. See, leadership is accessible to everyone, as I said, but an evidence-based framework helps to build the right habits. And not only that, you want to see what people are capable of before they're in over their head in some job level that maybe they're not quite ready for. Here's something interesting. There's a study of CEOs, and they are asked, at what age do you believe leadership development should begin? The average age, meaning some were lower, some were higher, but the average age given by CEOs for when leadership development should begin is age 19. But the average age, this is all in the US, by the way, the average age when people in the US actually get leadership development is age 44. We're going all those years in between with people learning bad habits, with people missing out on opportunities to fully understand and become more effective leaders. Ooh, and there's a price to pay because by age 44, many people are already in their first, second, even third management job. They've been managing without knowing how to lead. That means that they're overemphasizing the management of work and leaving out the leadership of people. It means they're using the tools of management like their authority, their title, their systems, their processes, without using the art of mobilizing others to want to struggle for shared aspirations. There is no downside. Conversely, there is no downside at all of developing leadership at every level. Now, let me give you just a little bit more here for context. Senior managers, sadly, sometimes fail. Sometimes they fail and we leave them in those jobs because we don't know if we can do any better or because we feel like they've earned it based on number of years of service. But you do see senior managers, I'm talking directors, VPs, even the C-suite. You do see folks who bounce around a lot from one company to another. And that's because they fail and they know enough to leave before it gets problematic to stay, even more problematic than it already is. What I'm showing you on screen comes from an older book. It's The Leadership Pipeline by Ram Charan. There are so much gold nuggets in that book. But this is about the main reasons, the primary reasons that people in senior management tend to fail. The first one is that they were brilliant technical experts, whatever their functional area was. They were well educated, highly experienced, top performers, decent managers when it came to handling the work, but they didn't have time within all of that. They didn't take time to develop soft skills and leadership abilities. And you've probably heard it said before, what got you here won't get you there. When you get into roles where a whole lot of people are counting on your leadership, the vision that you craft based on what they've shared, so it's shared aspirations. If you don't have those kinds of skills, your technical knowledge just isn't sufficient anymore. The second most common reason is that people are over relying on what served them in that previous role. So if you're over relying on functional and technical experience, and suddenly you're working across divisions and you need to think about strategic work and collaborations and rallying others that don't even work directly for you, you've got no authority, so you have to rely on influence. Suddenly the job gets really difficult if you've never developed those skills. And then there's, well, a lack of accountability. If you've never held yourself accountable, you don't hold others accountable, and not just for results, which is the work of lower level managers, but also for doing things the right way, according to our values, with good interpersonal communication in ways that are effective and positive and building the environment and the culture that you want. Here again, we're talking about influence. If you've never done that work and suddenly you're in a senior role, you just don't know what you don't know. All of that, though, comes from leadership development. And I think it's unfortunate if we're putting people in this bad position of never having learned about it and then suddenly expecting them to do that. Well, shame on us for not doing things in the right order. Okay, now if you want to solve this problem, if you want to correct for this, here's how. First of all, you disabuse everyone of this notion that leadership and management are the same thing. It's just not true. So uncouple those, get people thinking about leadership as a mindset. Who can you guide? Who needs guidance? Who wants your guidance because you know the way there? You've got the machete that can take down these particular vines in this particular jungle to bring people to this better place. And then know that leadership, it's not about charisma or any other personality characteristics. Leadership, evidence-based. Leadership is really a set of behaviors. Specifically, it's 30 behaviors. Over 6 million people have participated in this research from Kouzes Posner. 30 specific behaviors make people more effective when they lead. 30 behaviors isn't that many. You can acquire those, and even better, those behaviors, they're not all that mysterious or difficult. No special education or skills required. It's just about knowing the behaviors and then choosing to do them more frequently. That's what makes leaders at any level effective. Now, think too about leadership as a springboard. From leadership at every level, we're going to have accountability. People will embrace and own their own stuff. And we'll have more engagement because of this inclusivity and this emotional commitment when we dignify people. And you're going to build this over time. It's a staged approach. It won't happen overnight, but you can stage it by thinking about a construct, something like this. If you have leadership at every level, I recommend starting with the people at the top of your organization. That might be executive coaching. Maybe you send people at the top of the organization through the Leadership Challenge. It's a fantastic program. It includes a 360 assessment. It introduces those 30 behaviors. They're rolled up into the 5 practices of exemplary leadership. You can look any of this up. It's very well known, highly effective, proven by not only the research of Jim Kouzes and Barry Posner, but by many, many, many other independent studies as well. And they have real business impacts, true dollar and cents kinds of results that you can get. But sequentially, if you think about the org chart bottom up, the program called Self-Empowered, that's for self-leadership. It has a lot to do with personal and emotional awareness. It's about values clarification. It's about understanding the tensions and the trade offs and developing a point of view on what matters to the organization and to you as an individual. As employees do this work and get this awareness, they'll have a better understanding of where there is and where there isn't alignment. And then they can be better participants in decision making. They'll have self-awareness, they'll gain organizational awareness, they'll be less focused on their own needs in the moment as an employee, but they'll be thinking bigger picture and understanding why it is sometimes the organization has to say no. If you stress the importance of all this early on, people being self leaders and self empowered, that sets the stage for future leadership development. It also reveals to you, those of you who are in HR or management, it reveals who has the genuine interest in developing themselves as leaders. Now, as people move into roles where they're going to manage others, it's really important to get good management training. Good management training includes things like setting expectations, giving feedback, delegating. It includes change management and conflict resolution. Right? These essential skills are all part of our course called Workplace Conversations. That course has a very specific focus, dual focus on managing work and leading people, because ultimately that's what supervisors and managers should do, both parts of the job. So as people move into managerial roles, they have to remove themselves more and more from the daily work. They have to trust that to other members of the team. And they have to be able to become handlers of the work that needs to get done through other people. Eventually, maybe folks get into leading the organization, senior leadership. That's where the executive coaching might come into play. But the leadership challenge, it's for anyone who's in management at any level. And then the challenge continues. That's ongoing. That's for people who have completed the leadership challenge course and are extending their leadership journey. Now, I'm going to tell you mostly about Self-Empowered. This is a new course from the creators of the Leadership Challenge. It's all based on the same research. The 5 practices of exemplary leadership is the evidence-based model. The Leadership Practices Inventory, or LPI, is the assessment tool that helps people gauge the frequency of those 30 leadership behaviors I mentioned. In this particular course, rather than it being a 360, this is a self-assessment. And from the self-assessment, an incredible, very robust, personalized report is generated. And that becomes the guidebook through the workshops, through the ongoing action planning and development that people will do. They use this report. When we offer this course, Self-Empowered, we also include some one-to-one coaching just to make sure people have a good, strong start on that action planning, on the interpretation of their assessment report, and that they know what comes next for them. They make some decisions. I'm going to show you, this is way too much to read here, but you can download the slides and take a closer look if you want to, but I just want to give you a little sample. The personalized report, it's 20 plus pages of guided activities, insights, reflection questions. It's a companion. We use it during the workshops and in the coaching, and it's highly personalized based on responses in the online assessment, the assessment of those 30 behaviors. Now, the 30 behaviors, as I said, they're grouped up into the 5 practices of exemplary leadership. So you can do the math. 5 practices, 30 behaviors. Each practice has 6 behaviors nesting underneath it. People get a score by practice. The practices are model the way, inspire a shared vision, challenge the process, enable others to act, and encourage the heart. They get a score, and they get very specific tips about behaviors that they can do more frequently that will make them more effective as leaders of self, leaders of others, leadership at any level. It gives them practical tips. Right? These are clear, concise suggestions for the next steps and for the success measures that they could be using. And they also get some personalized encouragement. It's all baked right into the report. So this is an excellent tool. You can get this over on People First Leadership Academy. If you're remembering, I've got the attachments for you there directly into this class, as well as the course catalog for all the classes at peoplefirstpotential.com. This is where people start. We offer the class Self Empowered every 2 months. So we have another one coming up in May of 2023. And it's a small cohort. We never take more than 18 into that class. It's public, so you come in the cohort, you have people who are from other organizations, you get great cross-pollination of ideas, little learning community, and it's virtual. So we keep it affordable and people can do this right from their desk or from home. So if you're interested in that class, I encourage you to go take a look at it, Self-Empowered. The Leadership Challenge is a more robust, in-depth class. I recommend it for people who are in management already. And then the Workplace Conversations class, that's the one that's about the supervisory and management skills. So take your pick, find something that works for you, but whatever you do, the big takeaway today is definitely be thinking about leadership at every level. This is what engages and retains people. It's what creates your bench strength for the future. And it makes you an employer of choice because not everybody's doing this. Everybody wants this, but not everybody's doing it. And as you can see, it's a lot more affordable than you may have realized. So thanks for spending time with me. If you don't mind, leave me a little review here and be sure and come back next month. We're here every month giving you topics that are meant to help you develop the people in your organization.